If there's one good thing about getting older, it's looking at your favorite maps being reinvented 6 years later. And as I get older, I kind of realize that every time I do come back to Insurgency, and it's been, what, like 12, 13 years since the mod came out, and it's been 6 years since the official standalone game came out, that Insurgency really hasn't changed. It's never been a game about getting as many kills as possible. It's always been, in my experience, just surviving for as long as you can before inevitable death. So this video is going to be talking about my experiences over the testing weekend, and half also just talking about Insurgency to mark a 10-year anniversary, I guess, of the game that I played so many years ago. Sandstorm is doing testing for its 1.8 version this weekend. They've added some new toys, so they've added the AUG, which has been touted for a long time now. They've also added the Famas, which has a stupid fire rate on it. They've also got a few new sights. They've got some grips, which also change up the stats on the gun you're holding. Some of them, for example, will make you reload quicker. Others will let you aim down sights faster. Something really different for me, is just coming from Insurgency way back then, when it was a mod, is the different way to aim your sights. So there's an option now when you're scoped in, swapping you to your laser, and that opens up the FOV entirely, which means that you've got a lot more to see to your left and right, and really helps you out in close range engagements, which I think is definitely welcome for a map like Tell. I remember it was a very aggressive close quarters map, and it's just an alternative to consider if you don't really like running a pistol. The map aesthetic has really changed to be a bit more colourful and more vibrant. I don't know if you can pick that up on the old game, but it was quite dark. It was quite creepy as well, walking around. And that has also, I think, to do with the sort of ambient sounds that you have in the background. At times, I felt like Tell felt a bit like Rainbow Six Siege, especially in the kind of like purple bar area. And you'll see there's like a lot of paint just kind of like slapped on all over the map, which makes it a bit, I don't know, it just kind of has lost that serious feel to it. On the flip side, then, you know, throw in visuals like blood and the fact that you can run around with 7.62 and blow someone's head off. The reason why I have a soft spot for the game is just the fact that it really teaches you how to balance between being really aggressive one moment and then being very passive and kind of taking a step back to like assess the situation. And when you get that balance right, it is, you know, a really, really excellent way to play other FPS games. You can't always 100%, you know, push rooms and be aggressive. You have to take a step back sometimes. The side-by-side shots are a really good indication of how little cover there was back then to storm this hill. The approach was a lot more narrow, the map was arguably a lot smaller as well, so when you had a full team of defending forces, it made it that much harder compared to how it is now. There's a few reasons for this. You know, one, with an old engine, you've got less shadows. Two, the map setting was very desert, very open, and while you had to some extent some fog of war, it was still very easy to spot people running out of this spawn area going up the hill. And you have to remember that The map was very popular, and the game mode push was very popular because people fell in love with this map. People loved the challenge. I think to its credit, even now when I walk out of that main, I'm still looking at exactly the same spots as I was, 12 years ago. So you're looking at the hill, you're looking at the individual marksman pillbox. If you want to flank right, you're going to be looking at the tank, you're going to be looking at the actual objective on A. And, as we go through more of the map, you kind of see that fog of war, cover, and shadows just weren't a thing back then. The way that you would play this cat and mouse game of using your smoke grenades, trying to hide and flank and actually get up that hill without any commander abilities is why people fell in love with this game mode. Now, if you had the same amount of cover, the same shadows, and you still didn't have commander abilities, it would be objectively easier in comparison to how it was before. Commander abilities, in my opinion, are a get out of jail free card. The fact that you can basically destroy one wave of enemies if you call in a helicopter to stop them, rather than actually advancing using strategy, using area denial and camping. Camping was a huge thing back then as a form of area denial. I think that's just, unfortunately, the way that the kind of player base has shifted. To its credit though, gunplay has significantly improved, so there's a lot more weight to the shots when you fire your weapon, and you can really get a feel for the different types of caliber as well, just depending on the recoil pattern. And that creates a brand new challenge, which is, am I swapping between semi-auto to full auto, depending on the distance away from the enemy? Can I, break down the distance between me and the target to make this CQC? Old Insurgency was a lot more CQC focused because of the fact that you didn't have as many sites, right? The classes were locked. So my strategy back then was to try and pop smokes, pop flash grenades, try and close the distance between me and the target. The thing that I've had to relearn is kind of counting bullets. So the old games, there was a lot less fast-firing full auto guns as you do with this latest update. So Famas will absolutely mulch through enemies. But you'll have to be reloading even quicker now. This is where positioning comes in a lot more, I think, with these fast-firing guns. If you run out of mags and you don't have a secondary, you better hope that you're in a good position to be able to run away, disengage, and reload before you get back into the fight. With increased movement speed, with this kind of really fluid movement system that they've got in it, it creates this sort of like paradox for any new players. You throw them, say, customization. You let them build their ultimate fantasy gun with 3 points. You kind of let them buy all this gear and look really sick, but I think a lot of players forget that Insurgency is still Insurgency. It's still one shot to kill most of the time. And you just have this like comical amount of people just running at the flag. That's a really good thing about the game. They haven't added additional time to kill. If anything, they've made it a lot easier. Insurgency is just that kind of game where if I want to play for 20 minutes and leave, I can do that. Otherwise, if I want to play all day, then I can play all day. The thing that they get right with it is that their customization doesn't change the character models to the point they're not kind of recognizable. So TF2, so Team Fortress 2, had this kind of problem. At the start, they put a lot of effort and a lot of concept art into making all of their, I think, 8-9 classes very individual. So it all came down to how the character held a weapon, looking at its posture, its size. It made sure that when you were playing one of the 9 classes, you could identify an opposite one and mix up your playstyle accordingly. And this is slightly off topic as well, but Insurgency, to its credit, actually does Insurgents well. They're not some copy-paste from, the early 2000s. They're not all quite generic. They actually look modern, they look realistic, they, all have really excellent voice acting behind them as well. It actually feels like you're playing in the 21st century. In terms of the kind of opposite number, the security forces, instead of being this kind of, all-male American military, which it clearly was, it's not as clear as to who security are. Could they be a national government? Could they be security forces? And that additional layer away from West invades the Middle East and we kill the bad guys, the fact that it kind of is removed from that creates a bit more fun and allows them, I think, to, well, one, customize a way. It sets up the environment for that. And two, it just kind of brings it up into a bit more of a futuristic conflict. Why now come back? And I've kind of thought about this question over the years, and frankly speaking, this might actually be the most negative thing I say about the game in this video. But one, following the jump between the mod to the standalone game, and then the standalone game to Sandstorm, I genuinely feel like the developers were just trying to do too much with too little content on the game. Let's use COD, Team Deathmatch, as an example. That game feature heavily got introduced in the release of Sandstorm. Throw that in with the fact that the 2014 version and the mod didn't really require a very high-end rig to run because it was Source. But if you looked at the same types of games at that price point, you could get something a lot more snazzy, which offered a lot more gameplay options. The game never really found its identity over the years, It started off as this very niche infantry based teamwork game, but you always had a mix of players coming from milsim backgrounds, so armor, squad, or like casual. So they always offered, more customization options. They always offered more teamwork options. And when you take the kind of model of Insurgency, which is very small maps in comparison to the bigger developers, very small player counts, then when you really boil down to it, the only real alternatives out there are the bigger games, unfortunately. The vehicles are very limited compared to games like Battlefield, which offer that, full mechanized warfare experience. And then just a couple of things as well over the years, which initially and still to this day has put me off Sandstorm, is this kind of obsession with kill streaks from like this Call of Duty model commander abilities. So you can call in a helicopter, as I said before, and it can wipe the entire team. Sandstorm got really, I think, big for its boots when it released. It was really big on kind of esports, so they were very obsessed with kind of ranking and getting the community behind playing competitively, which resulted in a lot of people thinking like, why are you doing this? You should focus on making the game optimized. You should focus on your strengths rather than getting obsessed with something that's so long term anyway. The thing is, the original Insurgency started off as PvP, so player versus player, very unforgiving. It really attracted quite a niche player base for that. But then it also invested a lot of time into the cooperative side, so you guys versus bots, which arguably has really flourished, and I think they've done a great job with it. You can get some really intense horde mode games in there, which has actually split the players, so I know people that just play co-op and people that just play PvP. But throw that in with the fact that, they've moved away from community servers and gone to official ones. This is what I kind of look for in a game. The thing that keeps me going back to a game is a game that knows its identity, knows where it sits among other competitors. And when I see devs kind of flip-flopping between all these other features that they want to incorporate because another big game is doing it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate well in Insurgency. So I think while something that I've learned to deal with to basically get that same experience from Insurgency, as a result of it, you have you know, pretty inconsistent teamwork on a game level. You also just have this new point system which eradicates classes entirely, in my opinion, and becomes a gun simulator. And the real stuff that I fell in love with, again, is modes like Push. You know, if you like invasion type game modes where you have an attacking team and a defending team over a sustained period of time, then absolutely try Insurgency's one. It's pretty heart pumping. Things like the reinforcement waves. So, you know, in most games you can just spawn whenever you want to, perhaps at the end of the round or something, but Insurgency actually has a wave system, so a number of people have to die before you can all spawn in again, which again creates some interesting strategies to focus on killing the other team rather than always playing the objective, and that's a really good way to kind of come back from a loss. To say that these things are what made me leave, I think it's very natural for people to just stop playing games or like grow out of them. Friends change, communities change with them, games sort of die out, and you know, here we are on Insurgency 3, which I'm playing 12 years later. So it's really nice to go back to a game that has remained quite consistent over the years, despite some of the shortcomings that I've mentioned in this video. And, you know, Insurgency is a game like this, right? If you are playing a game like Tarkov that's super serious and you've just been shot in the head for the 16 millionth time after sinking 2 million rubles into your kit, Insurgency will get you into the action and you'll probably be swearing in the death screen. But hey, you don't play Insurgency for the kills, you play it for the experience, right? Thanks for watching, check my other stuff out, and see you on the next one.
Hey yo, I'm new millennium hyping, like popping pills and Skyping. Introduced to the tab, your girl got gas, like she was down the trot. Y'all niggas ain't got no confidence. Back for the dollar like common sense.